Airports are places of movement, of stories crossing paths. But for some, a journey begins with more than just a boarding pass. It begins with suspicion, silence, and resistance. This is not just a story about power. It's about identity, justice, and the quiet strength of one woman who refuses to be broken. Her name is Immani Williams, and today, the system meets its reckoning. Immani Williams moved like someone used to being watched. Her stride was confident but quiet, her posture upright, eyes observant without ever seeming paranoid. Dressed in a dark suit, minimal jewelry, and her DOJ badge tucked deep inside her leather handbag. She looked like any other professional woman traveling from Atlanta to D.C., except she wasn't. She had done this trip dozens of times, walked through airports and terminals more often than she had walked her own neighborhood in recent years, but today felt off. TSA had cleared her without incident. Still, as she reached for her gate, a voice called out, "Ma'am, excuse me, could we speak with you a moment?" She turned. Two men in uniform stood near a checkpoint, away from the regular stream of travelers. One older, one younger. The older one smiled thinly, the kind of smile that showed teeth but never reached the eyes. "Just a routine secondary screening," he said, gesturing toward a private inspection room. Imani's instincts flared like sirens. She had worked civil rights cases long enough to know when a routine check was anything but. Still, she nodded calmly and followed. Inside, the atmosphere turned surgical. The older officer, Stevens, began his questions while the younger one, Chen, rifled through her belongings. "You travel often, I take it," Stevens said. "Fair amount," she replied. "Pretty nice watch," he added, lifting it with gloved fingers. "Gifts like this usually come with strings, don't they?" She didn't answer. Stevens smiled again, wider this time. Chen was more fidgety. He held up a small pouch of toiletries like it was contraband, just asking for thoroughness. He said nervously. Immani said nothing. She let the silence settle. Let them believe she was playing along. They didn't know that she had counted the number of cameras in the hallway, noted which ones had line of sight into the room, and mentally marked the time since they pulled her aside. "You from Atlanta originally?" Stevens asked, leaning in too close. "Or just been there long enough to pick up the accent?" She looked at him evenly. "I was born in Birmingham," she said, "but I grew out of assumptions a long time ago." That stopped him for half a second. But then he leaned back, chuckling as if amused. Things escalated when he found her badge holder. Not opened, not revealed, just seen. He didn't touch it, just stared. "You got a lot of credentials for someone who gets flagged by TSA," Stephen said. "Funny how that works." Immani replied, voice still low. She watched Chen's discomfort grow. He was younger than she expected, and something in his eyes said he wasn't used to things going this far. He glanced at Stevens, who ignored him, then back at her. "You know," Stevens said, "tight schedules can make people nervous. Sometimes folks in a rush are more cooperative if things move a little faster." It wasn't subtle, but it was deliberate, the kind of language that offered plausible deniability, but was understood instantly. "Are you suggesting I pay to expedite a security search?" she asked. Stevens didn't blink. "I'm suggesting that time is valuable, for all of us." Her voice dropped, quieter than ever. "There are cameras outside this room. None in here. You timed that, didn't you?" He finally looked unsure, not afraid yet, but uncertain. "You ever wonder what it feels like," she continued, "to threaten someone who holds your career in the palm of her hand?" That was the moment the shift began. Chen paused his search and looked up. Puzzled, she reached into her bag slowly, carefully, and pulled out her Department of Justice credentials. Not with arrogance, just truth. "I'm not just a traveler. I'm a federal investigator assigned to internal corruption within law enforcement agencies. My name is Immani Williams. And you just made the worst mistake of your life." The room went silent. Chen backed up so quickly he knocked into a chair. Stevens tried to regain control. "This isn't You didn't identify yourself. You didn't ask. Because you already decided who I was. A black woman in a suit. Alone. Confident. That scared you more than anything else I could have carried. Her voice cracked slightly. Not from weakness, but from weight. The kind of weight you carry when you've spent a lifetime being underestimated and over-explained. I've seen you before. Stevens. Not personally, but in 100 complaints I've investigated. You wear this badge like it gives you the right to disrespect people and call it protocol. She stepped forward. You're finished. He lunged toward her, not to harm. Just to interrupt, but it was enough. Chen blocked his path instinctively. Something had snapped in him. Years of training, yes, but also a gut punch of conscience. I think we need a supervisor, Chen said. Voice low. You think Stevens snarled, but it was too late. By the time airport command arrived, Immani had already called her direct supervisor. She didn't scream, didn't rage. She listed facts, times, names, actions. She had built cases on less. Stevens' face drained of color as senior officers arrived. They didn't look at Immani like a suspect. They looked at her like someone important, because she was... As Stevens was led away, Chen stood silently beside the doorway, his hands trembling slightly. She turned to him, softened for the first time. You knew better, she said. That matters. Don't waste it. He nodded, speechless. The terminal had emptied during the commotion, but a few bystanders stood quietly outside, uncertain of what they had just seen. A security officer whispered to a nearby passenger, who stared at Immani like she was a myth made real. She didn't wait for applause. She walked calmly to her gate, where her flight had been held just long enough, as she sat in her window seat, the city falling away beneath her minutes later. She finally allowed herself to breathe. She didn't cry, not today. But in the silence of 30,000 feet, she thought of all the women like her who hadn't been believed, who didn't have a badge, whose stories were buried beneath polite reports and closed-circuit lies. She thought of justice, not the courtroom kind, but the real kind, the kind that happens when silence is broken, and power is held to account. And when she landed, she would file her report, not because it would erase what happened, but because it would remind everyone that someone was watching, and her name was Immani Williams.